You got the raise. You did everything right. You stayed late, you took the calls on weekends, you wore the right clothes to the meeting where they told you they really valued your contributions. And then they gave you the number, the new number. And you nodded like it was slightly less than you'd hoped for, even though your heart was doing something that felt embarrassingly close to cartwheels. You drove home that night and did the math in your head. Not careful math, fantasy math, the kind where you subtract almost nothing and add everything. You thought about the apartment with the exposed brick, the car that doesn't make that sound, the dinners where you don't automatically flip to the right side of the menu. You thought, this is it. This is when things finally start to change. And here's the part they never make a video about. Things did change, just not the way the math suggested. 12 months later, you're making more than you've ever made. You're also, somehow, more financially anxious than you've ever been. The credit card balance is roughly what it was, except now it feels less like a problem and more like a personality. The savings account has a number in it that is technically positive. You've upgraded exactly 3 things: the car payment, the rent, and the subtle, creeping suspicion that you might be doing this wrong. You're not bad with money. That's the part that keeps you up at night. You're actually pretty smart about it. You know what a Roth IRA is, you've listened to the podcasts, you've nodded along with the advice about automating your savings and avoiding lifestyle inflation and investing early and often, like a person who absolutely intends to do all of that starting next month. But here's what nobody tells you, what the podcasts and the spreadsheets and the well-meaning Reddit threads all miss. The reason you're stuck isn't math. It's you. Specifically, it's the version of you that you're paying to perform every single day. Part 1. The raise didn't change your income, it changed your identity. Let's go back to the moment you got the offer letter. You didn't just see a number. You saw a permission slip. Permission to stop driving that car. Permission to move to that neighborhood. Permission to exist. Finally. At the table you've been standing outside of, nose pressed to the glass, for the last several years. The raise wasn't income. It was admission. And that's where the whole thing starts to quietly come apart. Because you did something that felt completely rational in the moment. You looked at your new salary, and you thought about who makes that salary, what they drive, where they live, what they wear on a Tuesday, how they talk about wine. And then, slowly, genuinely, without even noticing, you started becoming that person. This is not a character flaw. This is not weakness. This is something so deeply human that it predates money itself. We have always signaled belonging. We have always bought what our tribe buys, worn what our class wears, eaten where our peers eat. The problem is that we now do this in a financial system that is perfectly engineered to charge us maximum dollar for the privilege of feeling like we belong somewhere we don't technically live yet. You upgraded the apartment not because you needed more space. You upgraded because the old apartment felt like the person you used to be, and the person you used to be made less money, and you didn't want anyone, including yourself, to see that person anymore. You bought the car not because the old car didn't run. You bought it because when you pull into the parking lot at work, the car says something before you do, and what you needed it to say was, "I belong here now. Please don't look too closely." You started eating at the places your colleagues mentioned without being asked. You bought the thing in the store because it was the thing the version of you who has arrived would buy. You made, in aggregate, 100 small decisions that each felt justified, and all of them together quietly ate the raise whole. And now here you are, making more, keeping less, wondering if something's wrong with the math. Nothing's wrong with the math. You're just paying dues to a club that never asked you to join and will never pay you back. Part 2. The identity tax and why nobody calls it that. There's a concept in economics called lifestyle inflation. You've heard of it. Personal finance people say it with a slight grimace of someone describing a disease that's perfectly preventable, implying that anyone who gets it simply lacked willpower. Just don't spend more when you make more. Simple, obvious, completely useless as advice because it treats the symptom without naming the cause. Lifestyle inflation isn't a spending problem, it's an identity problem. It's what happens when your income rises faster than your self-concept can catch up, and in the gap, that terrifying, uncomfortable gap between who you were and who you're supposed to be now, you start spending. Not because you want things exactly, because spending is how you close the gap. Because buying the right things, in the right stores, in the right neighborhood, tells both you and everyone around you that the transition is complete, that you made it, that you belong. Call it what it actually is, the identity tax. Every time you move to the nicer neighborhood, not because you need it, but because the old one makes you feel like you're sliding backward, that's the identity tax. Every time you replace something that works with something that says you're the kind of person who has better things, that's the identity tax. Every time you go to the restaurant because your peer group goes there, and the idea of suggesting somewhere cheaper makes you feel a particular kind of shame, the slow, hot, spreadable shame of being perceived as someone who can't afford it, that's the identity tax. The tax isn't random, it's targeted. It hits hardest at people who came from less and are now making more, because those are the people for whom the gap is widest and the need to close it is most urgent. Nobody talks about this, by the way. The personal finance industry is not interested in class anxiety. It's interested in compound interest. But compound interest won't save you if you're bleeding identity tax every month and don't have a name for what's happening. Here's the number that should wreck you a little. The average American who gets a 20% raise increases their spending by 17% within the first year. They feel richer. They are, in terms of wealth accumulation, almost exactly where they were. The raise bought them a more expensive version of the same financial paralysis. You're not broke because you don't know how to budget. You're broke, or close to it, or further from financial freedom than your income should allow, because you're funding two lives simultaneously: the life you actually live, and the life that proves to the world and to yourself that you deserve to live it. That second life is the expensive one.